Do any vaccines on the childhood vaccine schedule contain MRC5 human diploid cells?
Yes.
What are these?
Rubella, varicella, hepatitis A. Let's see.
What are MRC5 cells?
They are human fibroblast cell strain.
Okay, and how were they created?
They were created by taking fetal tissue and from a particular fetus that was aborted by maternal choice, and the cells, the so-called fibroblast cells, were cultivated from that tissue. The fibroblast cells replicate for about 50 passages and then die.
So MRC5 cells are the cultured cell lines from aborted fetal tissue?
They're not cell lines.
What are they?
Cell strains cultivated from an aborted fetus, yes.
So cell strains from an aborted fetus?
Yeah, they're not immortal.
Okay, so they live for 5 generations and then they die?
About 50 generations.
About 50 generations and then they die?
Yes.
And then how is more MRC5 created?
Well, a seed stock is made of early passage cells so that one can go back to the seed stock, which is, let's say, at the more or less the 8th passage, and make new cells at the 20th passage and use those to make the vaccine.
Okay. So these cell strains are human cells?
Yes.
Okay. Do any vaccines on the childhood vaccine schedule contain WI38 human diploid lung fibroblasts?
Well, they used to, but I don't think anything is made in those cells anymore. They've been replaced by MRC5.
So you're not aware of any vaccine that has in its final formulation WI38 human diploid lung fibroblasts?
Well, as I said, at one point in the past, RA273, for example, rubella vaccine was grown in WI38, but the supply is insufficient, so MRC5 is now used.
Okay. And WI38 was created from an aborted fetus?
Yes.
They took the lung tissue from the aborted fetus?
Yes.
And from that they've grown this cell line, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Cell strain.
Cell strain. And okay. Is this cell line immortal?
No.
Okay. Do any vaccines on the childhood vaccine schedule contain human albumin?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What is human albumin?
Human albumin is part of human serum.
And what is human serum?
What is human serum? Human serum is part of the blood that is liquid.
Right. It's the non-red blood cell part of the
Yes.
blood, right? From where was it obtained?
The human serum?
Yes.
Well, that would be variable from donors who are healthy donors. That's all I could say to that.
How is it used in the manufacturing process?
I'm sorry?
How is it used in the manufacturing process?
Well, serum is used to keep cells healthy during the process of making a vaccine. So in other words, since the vaccines, or some vaccines, have to be grown in cells, you have to keep the cells in a good state.
Mm-hmm. So the cells that are used, the virus or bacteria, the virus is used in some of the the virus is used in some of the vaccines are grown in this human blood component.
Well, yes, I believe that the serum is removed in the final product, but certainly it's important to keep the cells healthy during the manufacture of the vaccine.
Do you think that, so none of it remains in the final product?
I don't believe so, no.
Yeah, because that could be problematic, right?
Well, it could be. I mean, if the individual is not healthy.
Right, or if maybe some of the, human blood components bind to some of the aluminum and develop antibodies, self-antibodies, correct?
If they develop antibodies against a serum component, that would not be good.
Right. What do any vaccines contain human material in them that? I'm sorry, strike that. Apologies. Do any vaccines in the childhood vaccine schedule contain recombinant human albumin?
Yes.
Okay. What is this?
Sorry?
What is recombinant human albumin?
It's albumin.
Sorry. Recombinant human albumin, that's ALBUMIN. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a component of human serum which is useful to stabilize cells and keep them healthy. And it's made by genetic engineering.
Okay, so it's genetically engineered human serum, basically.
A part of human serum, yes.
Are these genetically engineered protein structures?
Yes, and the idea was to eliminate any possibility of a contaminant from human albumin obtained from donors. So it's made in cells using the DNA for albumin, and that way one can be sure that there's no contaminant.
And again, you pretty much want to make sure that none of that remained in the final product too, right?
Well, human albumin is probably not much of a problem in terms of causing reactions. So,
but in terms of it potentially binding to the alum, that could be problematic, correct?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. The vaccines that contain human material in them, they also contain human DNA and protein, correct?
They may, yes.
Okay. Isn't it true that human DNA in vaccines is typically purposely fragmented to below 500 base pairs in length?
Yes, one doesn't, I would say mostly for theoretical reasons, doesn't want to put DNA into intact DNA into vaccines.
Okay.
I think the actual risk is zero, but that's my opinion.
Isn't it true that MMR2 contains approximately 150 nanograms cell substrate, double-strand DNA, and single-strand DNA per dose, purposely fragmented to approximately 215 base pairs in length?
Yeah, that's probably correct, yes.
Okay. And is it true that Varivax, vaccine for chickenpox, is manufactured using WI38 and MRC5 and contains approximately 2 micrograms of cell substrate? No problem. And
Just wait for the whole thing too, Doctor, please.
And contains approximately 2 micrograms of cell substrate, double-stranded DNA, or approximately 1 trillion fragments of human DNA?
It may be true.
Okay. Isn't it true that Havrix, a hepatitis A vaccine, also contains millions of fragments of human DNA?
Likely.
Do you know whether strands of DNA below 500 base pairs are now known to insert themselves into living cells with which they come into contact?
I do not have that information, but the likelihood that they would be genetically included in the genome of vaccinees, in my view, is zero.
Do you have a study to support that view?
I do not have a study that supports that view, but it is, to me, unlikely that the DNA would travel from the site of injection to the semen or the ovaries.
Could it insert itself into DNA and even in the muscle tissue, or if it gets into the blood, into...
Theoretically, but that's not going to mean that it's going to have any impact on the individual.
Are you familiar with insertional mutagenesis?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any study to show that injecting millions of pieces of human DNA into babies and children is safe?
The only studies are all the safety studies that have been done on vaccines.
Okay. And you can produce those studies, right?
Well, those studies are available from the manufacturers and from CDC, and I'm not aware of any data showing that a heritable characteristic was transmitted by a vaccine.
Mm-hmm. So you personally don't know of any study that shows the safety of injecting millions of pieces of human DNA into babies?
Such studies are general safety studies, and I haven't yet seen a vaccinee develop a new genetic trait as a result of vaccination.
It's possible that it can cause cancer?
Anything is possible, but there are no data to support that.
Is there data to show that it doesn't do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Observations made over millions of vaccinees.
Okay. And you have the studies to show that, right?
The studies are easily available in terms of vaccine safety studies that have been done by many, many people.
Excellent. Then it should be very easy for you to direct me to those and provide copies.
Yes, you can
Wonderful.
read the chapter on vaccine safety.
Vaccines contain dead or weakened poliovirus, correct?
IPV does, yes.
Okay. Beginning in the 1950s, polio vaccines were routinely grown on non-human primate kidney cells, correct?
Correct.
Are you aware of any simian, monkey, viruses, meaning viruses that come from primates, that contaminated polio vaccines and infected individuals receiving the polio vaccine?
Yes, SV40.
Okay. And what does SV40 stand for?
Simian virus 40.
Okay. And was it the 40th simian virus found? Is that
Yes.
why it's called?